The rain hammered against the broken windows of the abandoned Georgian mansion as Elena Martinez clutched her sleeping children closer, their small bodies trembling in the cold December air. She had never imagined her life would come to this, a once proud nurse now homeless, sheltering her babies in a decaying relic of someone else's forgotten dreams. As thunder rolled across the estate, she whispered a desperate prayer into the darkness, unaware that the owner of this crumbling palace was about to walk through those very doors, and that this chance encounter would shatter everything both of them thought. They knew about fortune, family, and what it truly means to have a home. Marcus Rothschild hadn't visited the Ashford estate in 7 years, the sprawling property 30 miles outside. Boston had been his grandfather's pride, but after the old man's death, Marcus couldn't bear to set foot on ground so heavy with memories. Now at 42, with a net worth that Forbes estimated at $3.2 billion, he'd finally decided to sell the place. His assistant had scheduled contractors to assess the property's value, but Marcus wanted one last look before strangers picked apart his childhood paradise. The moment his Tesla pulled up the winding driveway, he knew something was wrong. A faint light flickered in what used to be the library, a room that shouldn't have electricity. His jaw tightened. Squatters. He'd heard about this happening to abandoned properties, but never imagined it would happen here. Not with the high walls and security, gates that apparently weren't as secure as he'd thought. Marcus approached quietly, his expensive Italian shoes crunching on broken glass. The front door hung askew on its hinges. Inside, the grand foyer where he'd played as a child was now a skeleton of water-damaged walls and missing floorboards. But the light was real, coming from the library ahead. He moved toward it, pulling out his phone to call the police. When he heard it, a woman's voice, soft and melodic, singing a lullaby in Spanish. He froze at the doorway, his finger hovering over the call button. The scene before him stole his breath and his anger in one swift moment. A young woman, probably in her late 20s, sat on a pile of old blankets cradling 2 children. One, a girl of maybe 5, slept with her thumb in her mouth. The other, a boy who couldn't have been more than 3, was awake, his huge dark eyes watching his mother sing. They were surrounded by carefully arranged belongings, a battered suitcase, some children's books, a few toys that had seen better days. In the corner, a camping lantern provided the light he'd seen from outside. The woman suddenly looked up, and their eyes met. Terror flashed across her face. She scrambled to her feet, positioning herself between Marcus and her children, her whole body shaking. "Please," she said, her voice breaking. "Please don't call the cops. I'll leave right now. Just give me 10 minutes to pack. My kids, they're sleeping, please." Marcus stood there, his hand still on his phone. But something stopped him from completing that call. Maybe it was the way she held herself, protective but not aggressive. Maybe it was the cleanliness of their small corner in this dirty, abandoned space. Or maybe it was the boy, now awake and clinging to his mother's leg, looking at Marcus with a fear no child should ever have to feel. "How long have you been here?" Marcus asked, his voice gentler than he'd intended. Elena's chin trembled. 3 weeks. I lost my job at the hospital, budget cuts, then my apartment. I had nowhere else to go. I'm so sorry. I know this is trespassing. I know it's wrong. But I checked, I researched the property. It's been abandoned for years. I thought just until I got back on my feet. Until I saved enough for first and last month's rent somewhere. I kept it clean, I swear. I didn't damage anything. I even fixed the leak in the library ceiling. You fixed the ceiling? Marcus interrupted. She nodded quickly. I was a nurse, but before nursing school, I worked construction with my father. I saw the water damage spreading, and I had some supplies from a job site donation center. I couldn't let it get worse. This place, even abandoned, it's so beautiful. It deserves to be cared for. Marcus looked up. Sure enough, there was fresh patching work on the ornate ceiling, crude but effective. He walked slowly into the room, and Elena tensed, but didn't back away. He could see now that she'd done more than fix the ceiling. The floor had been swept. The built-in bookshelves, though empty, had been cleaned. There was a small attempt at order in this chaos. What are their names? He asked, gesturing to the children. Sophia and Miguel, Elena whispered. They're good kids. They didn't ask for this life. The little boy, Miguel, suddenly spoke up. Are you the prince who lives in the castle? His voice was small but curious. Something cracked in Marcus's chest. He knelt down, his $1,000 suit pants touching the dusty floor. I used to be, he said softly. A long time ago, when I was about your age, this was my castle. Why did you leave? Miguel asked, with the blunt honesty of childhood. Because I forgot what made it a castle, Marcus heard himself say, the words surprising him as much as they seemed to surprise Elena. I forgot that. Castles aren't about the walls. They're about the people inside them. He stood up and looked at Elena, really looked at her. She was exhausted, he could see that. But there was a strength in her eyes that all his wealth had never managed to buy. She'd taken a bad situation and created a small island of dignity and safety for her children. She'd fixed a stranger's ceiling because it was the right thing to do. I'm not calling the police, Marcus said, and Elena's knees nearly buckled with relief. But you can't stay here. It's not safe. The structure is compromised in places, and winter's getting worse. Fresh tears spilled down Elena's cheeks. I understand. Thank you. We'll be gone in an hour. I'm not finished, Marcus continued. You can't stay here. But there's a guest house on the property near the East Gardens. It's winterized, furnished. The utilities are still connected. You and your children will stay there while we figure out a better solution. Elena stared at him as if he'd spoken a foreign language. I don't understand. Why would you? We're strangers. I broke into your property. You took shelter in an abandoned building and you repaired my ceiling, Marcus corrected. And maybe... He paused, surprising himself with what he was about to say. Maybe you're giving me a chance to remember what my grandfather tried to teach me about this place. He always said the Ashford estate wasn't about showcasing wealth. It was about providing shelter, being a haven. Over the following weeks, something remarkable unfolded. Marcus found himself driving out to Ashford Estate more than he had in years. He'd come to check on Elena and the children, but he'd stay for hours. Sophia would show him drawings she'd made of the castle, and Miguel would tell him elaborate stories about the adventures he imagined in the overgrown gardens. Elena, with Marcus's help securing the proper permits and contractors, began overseeing the mansion's restoration. Her construction knowledge proved invaluable, and her eye for preserving the estate's character while modernizing its structure impressed even the seasoned contractors. One evening in February, as they stood in the newly restored library, Elena turned to Marcus. Why are you really doing all this? It's not just about us, is it? Marcus ran his hand along the repaired ceiling. The ceiling she'd first patched with borrowed supplies and determination. I spent 7 years running from this place because it reminded me of loss, he admitted. My grandfather, my parents, everyone I loved. But you walked into this abandoned wreck and saw what it could be. You saw shelter when I only saw ghosts. You reminded me that buildings aren't monuments to the past, they're promises to the future. What does that mean for us? Elena asked quietly. When the restoration is done? Marcus smiled. Well, I've been thinking. The estate needs a property manager, someone who understands its bones and its heart, someone who knows how to fix a ceiling and create a home. And I've been thinking about my grandfather's original vision, turning part of this place into a community center, a shelter for families in transition. It would need someone passionate to run it, someone who's lived through what those families are going through. Elena's eyes widened. You're offering me a job? I'm offering you and your children a home, Marcus said. A real one, and yes, a job if you want it. A purpose for this place that I think my grandfather would have loved. 6 months later, the Ashford estate reopened not as a billionaire's monument, but as a living, breathing community. The East Wing housed families in transition, providing safe shelter and job training. The West Wing became Marcus's residence when he visited, which was often now. The gardens where Miguel played became a children's learning center. And in the restored library, where Elena had first patched a ceiling out of respect for a stranger's abandoned dream, there hung a plaque. A home is not where you escape to, but what you build, even in ruins. Sophia and Miguel grew up running through halls that echoed with laughter instead of emptiness. Elena discovered that healing could be more than medicine. It could be giving others what she'd once desperately needed. And Marcus learned that the greatest fortune wasn't in his bank account, but in the moment he'd chosen to see humanity instead of property lines, to offer shelter instead of judgment. The abandoned mansion that had once been a tomb for memories became a cradle for new beginnings, all because one desperate mother sought shelter and one wealthy man remembered that walls only become a home when compassion lives within them.